Hi, I'm Martyn Sibley, a community leader at Open Inclusion. Welcome to our podcast series, Inclusive Design, Broader Perspectives for Better Experiences, also available as a captioned podcast on Open Inclusion's YouTube channel. Open Inclusion is a research, user insight, design and innovation consultancy based in London, England. We help organisations create beautifully inclusive and effective experiences. If you would like to know more about the work we do or would like to contact us, please visit openinclusion.com. We would love to hear from you. In this podcast series, we're interviewing a wide range of people who help us better understand inclusion, both from a user and service provider perspective. So this episode, it's a bit of a special episode in the context that we are right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic and crisis. The world has run to a bit of a halt. Economies have stalled. People are not travelling around for work or education or indeed leisure and tourism. And so rather than have a guest or multiple guests on from different sectors of the economy and brands or experts in inclusion and universal design and research, it made much more sense to sit down with Christine Hemphill, the founder and the CEO of Open Inclusion, and really just get to hear all about Christine's thoughts. And obviously I throw some of my thoughts in the mix as well, and just look at, where we are in terms of the problems and issues at the moment. But also I think, and this has come up a few times in different conversations I've had, how maybe COVID-19 in a medium and longer term perspective could have some silver linings for disabled people and inclusion, and that touches upon studying at home, being able to work from home, having more virtual tourism for people that have always been unable to fly or go abroad. So yeah, definitely potential future positives. And obviously the whole time looking at how inclusive design and universal design is going to be able to help push that forward and take advantage of this opportunity for better inclusion, and some of the things that Christine and Tom and the guys at Open Inclusion will be doing to drive that as well. So hope you really enjoy this special edition podcast. There's also a bit in there from Christine about herself and about Open Inclusion. We originally recorded this as part of my Daily Sib, which I do every weekday at noon with different guests. So it's also been a way to reach out to my audience on my channels, but also to create this amazing podcast for the Open Inclusion viewers and audience as well. And I think just to give the context, that will explain when there were some questions from an audience. They were people coming in from Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube. And yeah, just some of the fact that we went over the amazing backstory to Open was very necessary for my audience. But also in this instance, I think even if you've heard it, it's great to get refreshed on the values and the importance of the work that Open Inclusion does. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode, and let's get cracking. And as I was saying yesterday, we had Chris Fry on, and there's some, sometimes people come on the show that I actually know lots about them and what they stand for, what they want to share. But it's really great for the people that have engaged in the show to get to hear that. And I think today's very much that it's just for us to have a chat and share our thoughts and insights on the world today, and obviously for you to share what Open Inclusion is and a bit about your background. So if we start there, could you give everyone watching a little sort of intro to you and Open Inclusion?
Yeah, happy to. So I set up Open Inclusion 5.5 years ago with the idea of bringing inclusion into design. So really melding inclusive design into how people think about making products or services or environments that are just better for everyone all of their time. So I came from a design and innovation background. I saw two reasons for this. One is that understanding from people with different access needs or just different experiences, different contexts, but particularly those kind of edge contexts, that's what gives you the opportunity to make things that are just fundamentally better. But also people were designing beautiful things and thinking that they were beautiful, but they weren't. They were just beautiful for some people, not all. So it was very much make things that are just good, but good for everyone, and really bring that understanding. And the key thing to bring that in, and the key thing that was missing at the time, was the voice of consumer, and really understanding the diversity of that voice of consumer. So lots of people do, human-centered design or design thinking process, and they think that they've got lots of lovely insight in at the front end. They're often asking from people that are quite like the designers themselves what their experiences of this product or service or potential one is. And actually, that's quite limiting. So it was really getting that voice of consumers, particularly with lived experience of disability, but also with other specific access needs. So as we talk about COVID, lots of people have different reasons to be edge cases right now, and really understanding that why, and understanding that how different experiences impact people in different ways.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And so many bits jump out at me already, because I think, you're saying about the designers get very into what looks beautiful, but then has it got that use case for everybody? And then conversely, there are products that were made for specific, like disabled people, obviously very much segmenting down into that for blind people or for wheelchair users or whatever segment different use cases of that are. But then they maybe did apply the principle of making it look trendy and cool and sexy. And I think you can have it all. Like it is possible to be practical and beautiful, but it was more of the myths that needed busting. And what better way to do that than to speak to a group of consumers from a market that we know more and more has such a big value to it. So, I mean, in terms of as you started to go on the journey with Open, what were the challenges in the earlier days to getting it off the ground and starting to realize that vision?
Really good question. Essentially, there weren't many organizations or anyone doing what we were doing at the time. Now, having said that, the panel that is the kind of gem in the heart of Open, the consumer panel, predates Open. So Marianne Rankin, as you well know, but some of the listeners might not know, had kind of genuinely built the panel over 2 decades before we engaged that panel with Open, initially as a customer of her research, and then kind of embedded that within the organisation itself. So we took that on and have carried that legacy forward. So one of the things was there wasn't a lot of demand. So there was a little bit of demand because it had been going for a while, but actually mainstream organisations, there weren't that many of them realising the power of inclusive design and realising where and how they could engage with organisations like Open to bring that power into their businesses and their designs and their products and services. So there's lots and lots of describing the how, the why, and the what comes out of it. It's probably starting with the why you should do it, and really the business case, and the value of this market and the extent of this market, and all that stuff you and I talk about all the time. But then bringing that back into the more practical, well, how do I do that as business XYZ in this market with this target customer base, and getting quite practical. So the early stage was really just building demand and building a realization that this is something they might like. But actually over time, it's become a lot more mature. I think a lot of organizations now get that. In fact, right now, having just got off a conversation, a session this morning with the BDF, and lots of different organizations there, they genuinely get this. And there's a lot of very large organizations with fabulous people embedded in the organization that genuinely get this. So then it becomes a very different conversation around how do we do this really efficiently for your industry, with your target market, with your next product release in mind, as opposed to it's valuable. So it's been an interesting evolution of change. And actually also from our side, to be quite honest, increasing our research capability and our research methodologies. So we started off with a limited set of methodologies that we used, that we were quite used to. And actually back to the COVID-19 experience right now, all our research has to be remote. Now, we had remote research before, and we'd used it a number of times to bring in very hard to reach audiences in a way that suited them. But actually, this is forcing us to do much more research in more interesting ways again. So it's that constant expansion of the ways in which we can solve people's problems and get to insight.
Yeah, and I was sort of thinking about the words demand and supply, because obviously the generally makes sense. The demand is from disabled people for products and services and other things, and the supply is from the business. But obviously, in the open inclusion consultancy sense, it's sort of the supply is of that intelligence and that insights and that research which comes from disabled people, and then the demand in that context is from the business side. And as you say, the earlier days were more about trying to get businesses to engage and understand why it was in their interest to do it. On the panel side, could you just explain a little bit more about that, just for people that aren't aware of it, and what the panel is and how they're engaged with the services you do?
Absolutely. So our panel is, we've got just over 500 people who have different lived experience of disability and identify as such, or are just over 65 and might just think, just getting older, but have some access needs that come with age. So, either the one or other or both of those categories. And the panel, as Martyn knows, because he's one of our community leads, we've got 6 communities within that. And each of the communities, people will be in multiple communities potentially, but many of them are. But each of those community leads keeps us really focused on making sure that even the research itself is designed in such a way that is most inclusive and going to be able to engage with and listen to people in a way that's going to generate the greatest insight, but also a really good experience for the panel members. So those communities, we've got the 2 sensory communities of vision and hearing. We've got mobility dexterity, which Martyn leads. We've got older people, so just getting older, complex conditions, neuro and neurodiversity. So they're the kind of 6 communities we have at the moment. As I say, many people are across multiples, but it means that we put those 6 perspectives on everything that we design and all the outcomes that we put out there.
Yeah, I know. And what I've always really admired and loved about what you do, Christine, and what open inclusion stands for is that, we're all going out and talking about the purple pound and the value of the marketplace. But there are, and I'm not even thinking of a specific other business, but I think there just are cases where disabled people's input wasn't valued in an economic sense. But of course, at Open, the panelists like myself, we get paid per hour for the work we do. And also the panel, when they engage with surveys or focus groups or whatever it is, they also receive financial reward for their time, which I think is really important, but hasn't always happened historically.
It's been really important, fundamental, that we agreed day one with the panel. They're creating, insight creates value for organisations. It creates value for, people trying to create better product and product more suitable to more people. So if we're creating value, that value has to be reflected back to the communities that are providing the insight to do that. So it's really important to me, even when we're doing research, as we're doing at the moment, we're doing a piece of internal research really for off our own bat, so that we understand the situation now with COVID-19 and how people with different lived experiences are finding that more or less challenging. And even when we're doing that, it's always paid work because we're receiving value from that. So one of the fundamental tenets of the panel is always, where value is generated, it's always reflected back to the community itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the perfect segue to my next question, really, having obviously just looked at where Open's come from and the types of things it does. I mean, how's COVID-19 affected you as an entrepreneur, at Open as a business, but obviously very specifically looking to the community as well?
Significantly, like everyone else, you can take a big sigh before I say significantly. Yeah, it's multiple directions at once as well. So the starting thing is, as a small business, we're impacted. We're really impacted. Big businesses can't make many decisions at the moment. They're either a lot of people are furloughed that we would potentially work with, or they're completely heads down in the early stage of, oh my gosh, we've got a new environment we're trying to manage for. And so incredibly busy, doing fabulous stuff, by the way, just, having heard what some people are doing in the organisations out there we work with. But it means attention is elsewhere, and it's hard for people to make decisions to get a new piece of research off the ground and do anything with us. So, demand is going to be down short term. It's very unsettling for our community. Obviously, inclusion and exclusion, people who were excluded in the community prior to COVID, some of them are much more dramatically excluded now in different ways. So if people are not so digitally savvy, or if the digital environment is not so accessible to them, now there's so few options to have a physical interaction, that accessibility challenge has become an accessibility barrier to a much greater degree. Equally, there'll be other people that say have mental health conditions that might be being thrown around a lot further and a lot more deeply at the moment. There's physical challenges, so people with long-term health conditions that, some are, whether they're sick with COVID or whether they're sick and the health system is impacted by COVID. Obviously, long-term health conditions is a very specific group where the challenges have changed dramatically in the last couple of months. So I care very deeply about the community, and we worry about the impacts of that and understanding that well enough that when people ask us for advice, that we've got relevant advice to them. So that kind of finger on the pulse, understanding that what we felt might have been useful before is probably outdated very quickly at this point. So it's really important to keep that ongoing insight refreshed and coming through, because even something that was relevant 2 weeks ago or maybe 4 weeks ago at the beginning of the lockdown may be less or more relevant now. So just that's quite hard in a very fast moving environment to keep relevant and make sure that what we provide is as useful as possible. Long term is a different perspective. Long term, we need to get through this crisis, and this is a crisis, and it's a health crisis first, so let's not underestimate that. However, on the other side of this crisis, I see, and I know you and I have had this conversation before, a potential increased acceptance of difference, increased variability and ability to access services in multiple ways that are more suited to people with long-term, access needs. And I think from having heard a number of large organisations talk about what's happening in those organisations today, there have never been so many conversations where different needs are on the table being discussed by very senior people and really prioritised. So this is just the enablement that happens from this period, and this kind of shift of perspective that this is allowing, from a negative catalyst, but is allowing, I think can have a very long-term positive benefit on a more inclusive society.
Yeah, it's that definitely that chronology, isn't it? We can't deny the worries and the actual problems on a individual, business and societal level at the moment, and there will be a lot of pain in different ways, even maybe call it medium term in terms of recovering from all of the COVID-19. But yeah, I've heard from so many different people on the show and just from conversations that there is this hope and there's sort of silver lining, that there are ways that this can create longer term positive change. So yeah, obviously I'm very aware of the ethnographic study going on because I'm involved as well. But could you just share a bit more about that? What the idea is, how you're hoping to use it, how others will benefit from it?
Yeah, thanks. Back to that, we don't know what we don't know, and when things are moving very fast, it's hard to keep relevant. And a couple of weeks ago, it's about 2.5 weeks ago, I thought we need to be absolutely on top of this organisations aren't in a place where they can make the decision, let's just get open to do a big piece of research around it. We're just going to do it ourselves and share it, a bit of as a public good that can be shared into the community, so that when those decisions are being made, they're made in an informed way as best possible. So we kicked off this piece of research, which started last week, but that was kind of week 0. This week's kind of week 1 of a formal 6-week ethnography. It's a diary study that is a daily diary study, or 5 days a week, give people the weekend off, and just a couple of minutes each day sharing their experiences on what's causing challenges in their life, what's potentially easier, essentially that pre-post experience, but also around key themes of health, of getting food, of entertainment, of connection to other people, and so on. So we've got these 6 themes that we're looking for people to just kind of share what's their experience of that, given that they have different access needs. So it's a very small group, a cohort of 12 people, but there's 2 from each of those communities that I spoke of before, so that we've got a little bit of experience across the ability and disability spectrum, also including mental health in there, also including different financial vulnerability in there, so, and also including different health. So when you talked about thinking of how long the impact will last, I think it's quite interesting, because there's very different timelines for those different vulnerabilities, and some of them will be because of the lockdown. So they will be limited in specific and differential impact to while we are locked down, so difficulty getting carers to support and so on. There'll be health issues that will last for longer than that, and there'll be financial health issues that will last longer than that again. So it's quite interesting to kind of understand and start to get those insights. And we've just had the first week of insights we've got flowing through, and already there's some fascinating, really practical ideas that we can go out to market with and say, here's what we're finding, take it as it's there for you, and use it in the way that's most useful in your organisations.
Yeah, no, I say doing it on a personal level, like I'm aware of the broader issues that I, know from blogging and doing Disability Horizons and working with you, Christine. But like in doing my own diary and sort of, giving those videos every day or every other day, I'm being able to look on things I hadn't realized more on an emotional level, because we can reel off like this broad focus, this broad initiative, but it really got me sort of that self-awareness. And I know that the care for me is always such an important, vital thing, to be independent and just to live. And I knew that it was more compromised because of COVID. But I sort of noticed that on a lot of the diaries I'm talking about, I've had my bath and physio today, and almost like a relief that I've had my bath and my physio. And it just really shows that fear as well that's underlying a lot of people through all of this.
I think it's a really important point to recognise that there's practical realities of this, and those practical realities are around our physicality and around our how do we fill the gap, get food, get our prescription fulfilled, connect with people that we're used to doing. There's the how to practically, but there's an emotional element to this that I think everyone's impacted by, but again, like everything, in different ways. And one of the fascinating things with the diary study is, because it's daily over a 6-week period, we'll be able to look for some trends and look for some of those changes, either of individuals or of the whole cohort, as people go into fear or come out of fear and into acceptance, and come out of acceptance and into another lump of now what, or just to be able to see some of those trends. I'm really looking forward to in those kind of longitudinal perspectives.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking of longitudinal perspectives. We've been doing the podcast series for over a year as well. So, and that's been another initiative that you and Open have created. Obviously, I've been involved with the podcast and the presenting as well. But it sort of echoes Nick on LinkedIn. It's just very much, it's not even a question. It's just an agreement with all that we're saying, that having that real-time insights from the disabled people is so critical, and particularly now but having that longitudinal is nice to pick up those themes and those topics as well. So yeah, it's great to see.
On that very note, I mean, there's obviously a lot of people listening here today. I've just, if anyone's got any experiences that specifically like shared into market, we'd love to hear from you. So, I'm just Christine at openinclusion.com if you want to email me directly, or you can go to our website and you can find us there. But we'd love to hear from anyone who'd like to share, if you've got something that's specifically difficult or challenging, or you just wish the organisation that you are integrating with, or the service that you are trying to get understood, love to hear about it.
Yeah, there's a few questions that have come in more about how to get engaged with the panel in general. So I presume that would be the same sort of call to action around that contact detail, yes?
Please just, come directly to myself, pardon me, Christine at openinclusion.com, or Tom, who's our research director, who manages the panel overall, is absolutely fabulous, kind of master of all insight, really, in open inclusion, and he's just Tom at openinclusion.com. So either of us, please just connect to us directly. We'd love to have more people in the panel. We are constantly being asked, we grow research piece by research piece, and we're constantly being asked for research by large organisations. It is all paid research, and the more people we have in the panel, the richer the insights we can provide. So love to have more people in it.
Brilliant, thank you for that. And on the business side, I mean, as you say, it's been a very organic thing, and you've just gradually built up great relationships. We've obviously all been involved in the podcast we mentioned, but there were events that we did in London a few years ago. So obviously you spent a lot of time and effort creating that awareness raising to brands, and now there's a lot more brands already working with Open, and yourself and all of us panel leads as well. But just if someone's watching from a business that is interested in benefiting from these kind of insights, what would you say to them?
I'd say please reach out. It's something that we are really, we're very respectful of business as well. I actually come from a big business background. So before deciding to be an entrepreneur, which, has its interests and moments and challenges, as you and I know, I'd actually just worked with very, very large businesses. So understand that, developing a change momentum within an organisation is challenging, and does need to have, fundamental insights and value levers and different ways of communicating it to different levels and different people in the organisation. And we're really happy to partner with people on that, wherever you are in the organisation, to build that momentum and help make the organisation a little bit more inclusive of more people for more of the times they're engaging with you.
Brilliant. That's great as well for anyone on that side of the coin. So we'll start to wrap up in a minute, Christine, but is there anything else you wanted to touch upon before we do?
I think there's just one thing that you mentioned before that I think is a really fascinating and interesting trend that I'm feeling. I felt particularly this year in the built environment, but I know this is happening actually in the digital environment and customer service as well, but just because of one of the projects we've been doing. So universal design versus specific adaptive design. And you're talking about that kind of, the ugly comes in greyish or greyish medicalised product that has been designed for a specific need to solve for that need. Yeah, it's functional, it does the job, but it is completely undelightful. And then on the other side, you've got design coming through with lovely aesthetics and thinking about how it pleases people, whether it's the tactile pleasure of holding something and moving something, the visual pleasure of it, or the usage pleasure of it, and really thinking about it. And that crossover between those two is getting ever tighter. And good designers are very aware of understanding how their design is more delightful to more people, which is kind of pushing that universal design really into more and more edge cases and more of those uses that are more specific, and essentially taking away the need for a lot of specific medicalised adaptive design. But we're also seeing from the other side, adaptive design creating the innovation to bring into broad design. And
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Everyone talks about the kind of, it's a very old case study of, smart designs with their OXO good grips and so on. But actually we're seeing that across a lot of products in the home, where having that insight and understanding from the edges is creating really powerful, innovative insights for better mainstream product. And it's that intersection between universal design and adaptive design is becoming bigger and bigger. And essentially universal design is becoming more universal, and adaptive design, which there'll always be a place for, because you can't create one product that fits everyone in all circumstances. But options and adaptive design are becoming more delightful. So it's just the world of design, I think, is beginning to get this and is lifting their game, and understanding that, specifically listening to people with, quite strong conditions and needs and contexts, is a really great way of just making something fundamentally better.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Totally agree. Cool. Well, I've been looking across the different platforms, and there's not really been a direct question. It's more just agreeance and support and congratulating, really, of everything that you've been up to. So it's a nice feedback coming through, even if we've not got direct questions to respond to. But yeah, I think unless there's anything else you want to mention, Kristen, I was just going to say, obviously, I'm loving working, with you and all the things we're up to in changing the world. It's been, on a personal level, such amazing different projects and different clients and different impact that we've all been involved in the last 4 years or so. And it's good to see how it goes for the next 4 years, and obviously just that trying to get through this weird time with the COVID-19 at the moment.
It is. It's this, I think this period is a really interesting and challenging period for us all. And I'd like to make sure that we use the fact that we're all being blown around a lot. And me too, let's not pretend that this is all out there. I feel really impacted by it as well. I'm a parent of teenage kids. You might hear them in the kitchen making their lunch over there. That using this discomfort to rethink the way we do things, and to challenge ourselves, and please, people do reach out to us directly to challenge how we can position best, so that when we come out of this period, we've used this as a paradigm shift that's useful, as opposed to one that's just been difficult and that we've just survived. And I know, but you and I've shared this analogy with you before. I've shared it with a few people because I kind of feel it, that we were kind of on this stable, platform of a beach, or, a side of a stable space on ground. And this flood has come through that we didn't want, and we're in the flood waters at the moment, and we're kind of all grasping to make sure we grab onto something and keep our head above water. But the flood waters themselves have given us so much fluidity. They've given us an ability to move faster than we could before, and to think differently and land somewhere quite different. So when we will get back to a stable place, we will get to, a post-COVID-19 environment, but to actually use this opportunity of, yes, it's a really difficult moment for us all, but that allows us to challenge ourselves first and foremost, and then how we bring what we've got to an environment to make it better, in a new and better way. And I'm always a glass half full person. So yeah, it's really challenging right now, but I am looking forward to, it's making me think more deeply and differently about what we're doing. And I think that's hopefully happening in lots of places, and that's not bad.
Yeah, bit of contemplation and a bit of strategy, and looking at how things might go back to how they were, but that's fine. But how some things, it might be good to shake them up and change them as well.
I think there was a really lovely quote. I shared it on, I think it was Twitter, and it was in Hong Kong. Interestingly written, anyway, written in full form Mandarin, but in Hong Kong, which was, we don't want to go back to normal because normal was the problem in the first place. And not all of normal was a problem in the first place. There are things that we're probably all missing about the normal that we had, but there are certainly some things that were normal that we had that would be quite delighted to leave behind and get a new normal. So it's that let's consider what we want a new normal for, and let's start working towards that now while there's actually quite a lot of fluidity in the system.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, interesting times for sure. It's really good to, as I said there at the beginning, to share what you're up to anyone that maybe hasn't had as in-depth an update on it all. I'm sure that was very useful for them, but also just to catch up on things as we are with COVID-19 and beyond. So we'll sign off, and everyone, just as Christine said earlier, get in touch with any questions or other thoughts around as we go forward. Same for the people who watch the replay. We get quite a few people watching this not live, but it will be on YouTube forever. And we're going to sort of cut and edit it into an open inclusion podcast as well, aren't we, Christine?
We will. And anyone who wants to find us, our Twitter hashtag is @open4access, or say I'm just Christine at openinclusion.com. Or you can reach out to our research director, particularly for anything to do with the panel. You can reach out to me, you're welcome to. But he's Tom at openinclusion.com. So that's Tom Pakinko.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks again, Christine, and I'll catch you again soon.